We are literally days away from our conference, Revealing the Rainbow. Hello, I'm Jim Franklin, the senior pastor here at Cornerstone Church, and welcome to Cornerstone Live. Literally we are. We're just days away, and people now are signing up. I mean, this last-minute rush, I want you to be a part of this. I don't want you to miss this conference that we are having. It's the first of its type that we are aware of, and I believe it's going to set a standard for many conferences like this across the nation. This is one of the number one issues that people are talking about. I mean, any newscast that you turn on, legislative bodies, Congress, they're dealing with this issue of transsexual, of the gay movement, the LGBTQ community. So we need to get some information about that. We need to get the truth about it. And that's why we call this Revealing the Rainbow. It's going to be on Saturday, the 25th, Friday night, the 24th, a very special section. Here's the information where you can register. You need to register for this. Now, who needs to come? Well, the parents need to be here. Those who are dealing with this issue, pastors and leaders need to be at this event. School personnel need to be at this event. Really, I don't know anybody who doesn't need to be here. A little bit later on in the program, you're going to hear an interview with Chloe Cole. She's a young lady from right here in Central California who got caught up in this to the point that she took puberty blockers as a small child, then to the point of even having surgery to have her breast removed, and now realizes the mistake of that. Then I'm going to let you hear today an interview from Dr. Jordan Peterson that he explains why we are seeing so much of this today. Because everybody's always asking, well, why are we seeing so much of it right now? Why are the numbers soaring? Well, Dr. Peterson will explain that. So much today here on the program. But to get us started off, I want to bring in a friend of mine who have just written a book entitled Not a Mistake, A Parent's Hope for Their Gay Son. Jim Doman. Jim, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Pastor Jim, it's always great to be on your show.
So this is a powerful book. Tell them about it and why did you write it?
Jim, I wrote the book because parents are in crisis right now. Parents are desperate. We're seeing the LGBTQ community increase 10, 20, 30-fold, and Christian godly parents don't know where to turn as their kids are being indoctrinated in public schools and social media and on media in general, that you can be gay. And I really wanted to give hope to moms and dads that change is possible.
Now, this comes from your story, correct?
Yes, I came out of homosexuality over 20 years ago. My partner was HIV positive, hepatitis C positive. I was so desperate, Jim, I didn't care. Thank God he protected me from those diseases. And I'm now married, happily married to my wife, and we have 3 kids.
So I think that's the question I hear from so many parents that are concerned for their kids and see their kids being lured into this. I know we're going to talk about that at the conference, but give a little hope, a little bit of your story, of your journey that is in this book that I think brings encouragement to parents.
You know what, moms and dads, let me tell you this. Don't stop praying. I know you pray for your kids. Don't stop praying for them. God hears your cries, and he's faithful and will answer them. And you'll see my journey in my book, even though I raged and my parents had to deal with all the anger and the vitriol towards them and accusing them of not being Christians because they wouldn't accept my homosexuality. And you'll hear different stories in my journey through childhood, as a young man, and then in the lifestyle, and then coming out and what that looked like. It will give you hope. It will give you inspiration. And there's practical steps you can do now that will help you navigate this if your child is young dealing with this, or is already gay, or claims to be gay, or has been in the lifestyle for years. This book is going to not only give you hope, but I include 19 stories of former LGBTQ people around the world who have been transformed by Jesus.
And I think that's another thing that you're engaged with, is that community of those who have come out, those who have said, no, you can't change, but we've proven that, yes, they can change. And there is so many of those that are out there, correct?
Jim, there's thousands upon thousands of us, and most people don't stand up publicly or go on a TV show or radio program and confess their sin, their sexual sins. But I am one that is just, God's just opened an opportunity for me to do that and help those who want to change, that change is possible.
Again, the name of the book is Not a Mistake. I encourage you to get this. It is a great resource. And from just what Jim shared, that's why we are hosting the Revealing the Rainbow Conference, because I think we do need to talk about it. It's one of the number one topics that people were talking about. Just last week, when the president was being interviewed by Comedy Central, what did he talk about? He didn't talk about China. He didn't talk about the war in Ukraine. He didn't talk about the economy. He didn't talk about the border. No, he talked about people transitioning in the LGBTQ community. So it's front and center. That's why we need to have some answers, and we're bringing Jim and several others that are going to be with us on that day to share their stories and their expertise. Jim, you put together a great group that is going to be with us. Tell us about some of our speakers.
Jim, let me just say thank you to you as a pastor, as a leader of Cornerstone Church and in the community in the Central Valley, let alone the state and our nation, for hosting the first Revealing the Rainbow event. I really believe Cornerstone, your church, is going to launch something. It already has. Already have pastors across California and the United States saying, Jim, come bring your team of speakers to our churches. So what you'll hear at this conference, we're bringing a total of 4, myself, Chris Olson. Chris is a former lesbian. She was, or still is, part of the LPGA Tour, Ladies Professional Golf. A great friend of mine, Kevin Witt. You will meet Kevin. He almost checks the box for everything. Former transgender female, former drag queen, former prostitute. And I'm like, who is this man who's on fire for Jesus and is speaking out against our culture, our government, medical organizations, harming children and mutilating their bodies surgically? He's a former transgender female, now back to his biological male, and he tells his story. Jim, you'll see pictures of what he looked like before and after, and it's shocking. What he was and how God has redeemed him, and now what he's doing to fight to protect kids. And then Chloe Cole, I haven't actually met her in person. I've spoken to her PR agent, and she has got a dynamic testimony. She actually just filed a lawsuit against Kaiser Permanente in California for removing her breasts as a 15-year-old girl, and you can't undo what they've done. They've destroyed her body, and she's sharing her story and journey of transitioning and then detransitioning.
It is, her story, because she's from California, so she understands the climate that we're in here in this state, and speaks with such expertise, such a tragic story of what has happened to her, but again, the boldness with which she's speaking, and so important to hear that. And I think that's one of the reasons, Jim, we put this conference together and didn't just have medical experts. We could have had many that could have talked to it, or from a political standpoint of what is happening, or pastors from a theological standpoint. We thought, no, what we really need is individuals who have walked through this, walked out of it, and can speak with such expertise and give their stories. I mean, we've got the drag queen story hour at school glorifying it. They need to hear the other side of the rainbow. They need to see really what is going on and the transitioning and all that is happening in athletics when it comes to this subject. I mean, I'm so excited about the panel that we have put together, the experts that are going to be speaking on Friday night to pastors. It's going to be a great thing. Pastors, let me encourage you to come and be engaged with that. If you're a church leader, you need to hear this, because on Friday night we're going to talk really towards the church and what we can do, because my goodness, there are a lot of pastors that really don't know what to do. You deal with pastors every day, Jim, and they just like, I don't know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything. That's really not the right approach, correct?
Yes. And you know what? At the conference, we'll have 2 other speakers as well, representing a ministry, counseling choice ministry right in Fresno. So if you're in the Central Valley, There's counseling resources where people can help your family, your child, if they're dealing with these issues. And we'll also be talking it from that 10,000-foot view theologically. Church, we need good theological, biblical understanding because so many Christians, young specifically, are capitulating to the culture and following the word of the culture and not the word of God. And we need to be sharp with our minds, but also compassionate with our hearts, as Jesus was.
And then from that Friday night session, then the main bulk of the conference is going to be held on Saturday. Talk to me a little bit about what we've got lined up for Saturday.
Saturday, you're going to hear more in depth of our stories, our journeys, the different LGBTQ backgrounds, what's going on, and how we changed and what that looks like. And then we're also, again, we're going to go into another panel. So you'll be able to ask questions specifically to the church, or actually to Pastor Jim, and he will relay those questions to the panel. So you'll hear from all four of us our thoughts of what's going on in culture. How do I respond to my LGBTQ child? This is happening in my school. What do we do? Or this is happening in my church. Help us. How do we respond? What's grace and love, but not throwing out truth with the with everything else. So I really think, Jim, this is going to help equip not only your church, but the greater Central Valley, and to speak God's truth, grace, and love to this very relevant issue.
So who needs to be there at the conference, whether Friday or Saturday? Who should be there?
Pastors, Christian leaders. Come Friday night. It's going to be more geared towards Christian leaders. And I know we've got pastors have already responded to me personally that they're coming. Saturday is, I would say, is more the general population. If you're a churchgoer, if you're somebody that's struggling with this issue, if you're a mom or a dad or a relative or a loved one concerned, or you just want to learn more, what's the other side of this? Because culture says the formers don't exist. The former homosexual, the former lesbian, former bisexual, former transgender, male or female, we don't exist. That's what the culture says. They try to wipe us out, but I'm here to say that we do exist, and we want to bring hope that change is possible. So you'll get that heart, that feeling on Saturday, and you'll get to connect with us a little bit more on those deeper levels, and maybe ask some of those more, maybe a question you might be embarrassed to ask or don't know who to talk to about. And then on Sunday, we'll all be present in church, both services. And I think that'll be a unique, special time. But Saturday, you're going to get the meat. You're really going to get to hear stories. You can get a copy of my book, and really know and learn how to respond to the issue when you're confronted with this at work, in your family, or wherever it comes up.
The thing that I believe we're going to find on Friday and Saturday is people are going to be armed with the truth. There's nothing more powerful than a testimony. And there are many parents I know that are listening, grandparents, family members, friends that say, I've got someone that is being drawn away. I've got somebody that's in that lifestyle, and I really don't know how necessarily to address it. I can give them a Bible study, and they'll say, no, I don't want to hear that. I can give them what my pastor thinks or what somebody said. But when they walk away from that conference and be able to say, no, I listened to a man who was gay, and now he's married and got kids and very happy. I listened to one who lived as a woman for several years and was a drag queen, but now he's found peace and joy in Christ. I talked to a woman, very professional, very successful, and a lesbian, but yet now has realized the right way. And then the story of what's happening to our youth, of this young lady, of Chloe Cole, and when they tell their stories, they can't debate that. I mean, that's their story. You can't deny, and I've seen you testify before legislators and everything that, hey, look at me, I'm here. You can't ignore me. You can't deny me. Here's my family. You can't say this is not real. And so I think that's one of the things that people are going to be able to walk away. And let me just ask one final thing, Jim, because I know your heart. We've known each other for many years. We're not against anybody. And I think sometimes when churches or pastors speak about this issue, they want to be painted, well, they're haters, they're against somebody, they're trying to get them, and they're just sending everybody to hell and judgment. That is not our heart by any means. And that's, again, why I think that. But isn't that the attitude that we want to show, one of love?
Absolutely, Jim. And if you are a part of this conference, you are going to experience the love of God and the heart, the brokenness, the people broken who understand the issues. It's so ironic because people say, "Oh, you're homophobic or you hate people." I'm like, we don't hate the LGBT community. We're one of you. We lived it, we've walked it, we breathed it, but we've been radically transformed, and we want you to experience that transformation. But it's a choice. You can choose God or not God. We're not forcing anybody to change, but we want you to know there's an opportunity that change is possible and that God loves you and he can radically change your heart and your mind.
Folks, I want to encourage you to get the book, Not a Mistake, Jim's latest book out, Parents' Hope for Their Gay Son. And then, of course, come and join us for the conference. Jim, I'm looking forward to seeing you here at Cornerstone.
I can't wait to be in the Central Valley. God bless you, Jim. Thank you.
Jim had mentioned during that interview one of the guests that's going to be with us that I mentioned at the opening of the program, and that's Chloe Cole. You may have seen her. She's been on all the national programs being interviewed because she really has a unique story. Well, I say unique, sadly it's not, because it's a type of thing that is happening over and over and over again, just nobody wants to talk about it. Even to the point that now she has filed a lawsuit against the individuals who helped to bring this about, this tragedy in her life, where she looked to the medical profession to help her. In reality, now she's saying, no, you didn't help me when I needed to. Chloe Cole is a detransitioner here from the Central Valley. She began identifying as a boy at 12 years of age. Doctors prescribed to her puberty blockers and hormones starting at age 13. Can you imagine? Now remember, these drugs that they are recommending and they are not FDA approved. I read a story this week of literally where they are using our children with experimental drugs. That's what happened to her. At age 15, she had her breasts that were basically fully developed, but yet had them removed because, again, she thought this would be the thing that helps me in transitioning. Now she tragically recognizes how bad that was. And now she carries the scars physically, emotionally from what took place. She's now transitioned back to being a beautiful young lady. She's done several interviews. One that I found was with Prager University, a great resource. If you've not gone to prageru.com, you need to do that. So in this interview, I'm just going to play a little bit of it. She describes some of what she's gone through and the pressure that was placed upon her. Like, sadly, so many of our kids are under that pressure to move into that lifestyle, even to the point of what took place. So this, again, is an interview that she did, Chloe Cole, with Prager University. Watch this.
And you know, these consent forms, they do list like the side effects, but they're pretty vague. They're not very comprehensive. And you know, as I was 13 at this point, and I mean, teens and kids especially have a habit of thinking like, oh, I'm invincible, like nothing could happen to me. And before I started transitioning, I was like a perfectly healthy kid. I didn't consider what could possibly happen to me, really. During those appointments, my endocrinologist asked me, are you aware that you may experience like vaginal atrophy? Are you aware that this may affect your ability to conceive children as an adult? And you know, as a kid, it was just like, oh yeah, I know, I've done my research. And then, you know, when she told me about the potential impact it might have on my fertility, it was like, oh no, I don't want to have kids, because I was 13, I was a kid. Yeah. Like, how could I know?
Can you believe that? At the age of 13, she's making decisions, being pushed by the medical community, by this transgender agenda that is out there. She's making decisions at the age of 13 that's going to have an impact upon her and her ability to bear children for the rest of her life. That's what's happening. That's why you need to see the thing behind the rainbow. You need to see the tragedies of what are happening. People need to hear these stories, and that's what the conference Revealing the Rainbow is all about. That's why I want you to come. That's why I want you to help me get the word out about this. As a matter of fact, what we are going to have is that we will have this on our YouTube channel, because I know some of you are saying, I know somebody that needs to see this. I know somebody that needs to hear this. So you can go to our YouTube channel, Cornerstone Fresno, and there you'll see it, Cornerstone Live, Revealing the Rainbow. And it'll have the interview that we did with Jim Doman on it. As a matter of fact, it'll have this program it'll have there with Chloe Cole. But then there's another video that I want to bring you now by Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's very passionate about this issue because, well, he has seen from his position so much of the tragedy that's happened in people's lives. These are the stories you're not hearing. These are the stories that nobody wants to talk about. Oh, they want to celebrate the rainbow. They want to have their parades. They want to bring the drag queens into the classrooms. They want you to use their pronouns. All of that. But they're not telling you the tragedies that are happening in people's lives because of that. Dr. Peterson is one of them. He's asked in this interview, why are we seeing this now? I mean, we've heard the numbers of how they're soaring, and people will say, well, that's because now people are finally coming out. Well, statistics are not showing that. The data is not showing that. The science is not showing that. And so Dr. Peterson explains, why are we seeing such an uptick, such a surge in those now that are proclaiming that they are trapped in the wrong body? I think this is going to be so eye-opening to you. Again, this is Dr. Jordan Peterson on why we are seeing this happen right now.
So now professionals are bound by law to offer gender-affirming advice. They're bound by law. Okay, so this is what this means. If you bring your 13-year-old in to be evaluated by a physician or a psychologist, and maybe she has high levels of neuroticism, tilting towards depression and anxiety, and then that's making itself manifest in bodily discomfort, now that's being shaped by this cultural fad that insists that if you feel uncomfortable in your body, it's because you're of the opposite gender. That's the psychological epidemic part of it. And we can talk about that in a little bit more detail. But now you're duty bound by law, if you're a professional, to say, oh, you think you're a boy? Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely, 100%, you are. What can we do to facilitate that move forward? And that all got, what would you call, pushed into the law under the guise of the elimination of conversion therapy. So, unbelievable. Now, the problem with that is, you see, if you're a therapist or a physician, you don't affirm someone's identity. That's not your job. And your job is not to deny their identity either. Your job is to help them explore their identity and hopefully to develop it. And so someone comes to you, maybe they have body dysmorphia. And so maybe they're anorexic. That's a form of body dysmorphia. And so the first thing you do, if you have any sense, is you note that that's stemming out of an underlying, more global proclivity to suffer from depression and anxiety. So that's the big elephant in the room, depression and anxiety. So if the trans activist types say, well, the body dysmorphic types are more likely to have suicidal thoughts, it's not because they have body dysmorphia, it's because they're prone to depression and anxiety, and depressed and anxious people are more likely to have suicidal thoughts. And maybe body dysmorphia adds a bit to that, but nobody really knows. Probably adds some. But the fundamental issue is one of depression and anxiety. So now you're suffering from, unspecified self-consciousness, and the culture twists around to offer you a narrative. And the narrative is, oh, well, you're in the wrong body. And then the carrot is, and this is part of it gets extraordinarily pathological, is a lot of these kids who are suffering from this alienation are unpopular. And now they're being enticed. It's like, yeah, well, you're not unpopular. You're interestingly special. So if you just take this carrot, you're the opposite sex, all of a sudden you're not a victim, you're a brave, you're a brave seeker after your redemptive identity. And now you can be elevated and you can be treated specially. And my God, if you're an unpopular teenager, how could anything be possibly more attractive than that? And then you also think, well, why are teenagers gullible in that way? Why do they go along with the crowd? And the answer to that is, that's what you're supposed to do when you're a teenager. That's your job, right? Because first of all, you're with your parents, and you're not yet a fully fledged individual. And so what you have to do is you have to become part of the group. And if you're not part of the group, well, maybe you're a stellar, creative genius and you're exceptional in that manner, but more likely you're just a loser who couldn't fit in. And that sucks. That's for sure. So your job when you're a teenager is to fit in, as every teenager knows, and maybe not just to fit in, but, to fit in a positive way that elevates the community. But we could just settle for fitting in. And so teenagers are wired to go along with the crowd. And then if the crowd is offering something pathological, that happens all the time, you get a psychological epidemic. And I knew that. I told you. I told the Senate this in 2017. And why did I know? Well, I knew the literature. We've tracked psychological epidemics going back 300 years. 300 years. Here's some of them. Multiple personality disorder. It cycles in society. Disappears, then there's one case, then it spreads like mad. Then there's multiple personality disorder everywhere. Teenage girls mostly. Then people get skeptical about it, and it dies. And maybe it disappears for a whole generation or two. Then a case pops up. Just does this. That's happened for 300 years. Cutting was a psychological epidemic. Bulimia was a psychological epidemic. Anorexia was a psychological epidemic. The satanic daycare ritual abuse accusations that came out in the 1980s, that was a psychological epidemic. And the rule basically is that if you confuse people about a fundamental element of their identity, then those who are already so confused they're barely hanging on are going to fall prey to that, and all hell's going to break loose. And that's exactly what's happened in the trans situation.
You see, there's an explanation for this. Well, people are just discovering who they are. No, you talk to the doctors, you talk to the experts, you talk to those who have studied this, and they'll explain it to you for what it is. It's not people suddenly discovering their sexuality, especially among young people. They're going along with a trend and a fad. Sadly, tragically, it's destroying their lives. And that's why we're having Revealing the Rainbow. Parents, you need to be aware of what is going on. Whereas this country now is embracing this. Do you know how many other countries now have stopped it? Finland, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, France. These are people that are at the forefront that said, oh, this is the answer. We need to transition these youth. Have suddenly now seen what it's doing to the youth, and now they've made it illegal for it to happen. Study after study has come out from doctors that say this is not the thing to do, and now we're seeing the harm that is being done. But sadly, here in the United States, and even more tragically here in California, we embrace this out of well, we've got to be inclusive and diversity, and in reality, it is destroying our society and our youth. I'm not against anybody. I'm for people. I want them to know the truth because they'll know the truth, and the truth will set them free. Don't miss this conference. Now, you need to register for it. It's coming up on Friday and Saturday here, just days away now. Here's the information on the screen. Go to our website and there register. You'll see the list of all of the speakers. And I know some of you are saying, well, I want to share this information. Well, go to our YouTube channel, Cornerstone Fresno, and you'll there see this show, Cornerstone Live, Revealing the Rainbow. And there you can share it. Share the information that we've got. Help us get the word out. You know parents, you know friends that they're dealing with this issue in their family or even personally. They need to come to this conference. It's just days away now. And if you can't do that, come join us for services today here at Cornerstone. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. I believe they'll know the truth, and the truth will set them free. And I want to see you in church today.